Okay, what's up YouTube? This is Hunter with Small Arms Combatives. Got Kilroy Mosen here. We're gonna bring you a awesome video of Multicam versus M81 Woodland. So we're gonna do some scenes here in Eastern North Carolina. We're in the springtime where it's raining pollen right now.
Yep.
So, but there's no yellow in either one of our patterns. Maybe by the end of the video there will be. So we're gonna do several scenes. We got a lot of different types of foliage on this 33-acre training property that we have. There's a lot of pine woods and stuff that's very typical to this area. So I think it'll be a very good video. We are wearing gear. I'm going to talk about what I got on. So this is our micro rig that I'm wearing right now. 2 admin pockets on the front, holds 4 M4 magazines, AR-15 magazines, and then got the sack plate carrier on as well, and then the war belt or suspenders underneath that. So that's what I'm wearing. You're wearing a very similar kit right now, right?
Yep. Sack plate carrier. This is your 3 mag
placard.
I'm gonna be getting one of those in M81 here soon, but this is what I've got on for today. And also the sack war belt. Mine's a bit custom, M81 and Coyote, just because I already had a Coyote theme going around. So, you know, if you were gonna get your own,
more of the woodland, the Coyote webbing on the woodland. So remember making that one.
Yep.
So,
not as woodland as it normally would be, but hey, it gets the job done.
So the way we're going to do this is we're going to shoot some scenes. We're going to shoot the scene with multicam, and then at exact same spot we're going to shoot the scene with the woodland, and do hopefully very similar movements so you can get a comparison right then and there. And then after we shoot the scenes, we'll talk about what we think after we do the review. So enjoy. All right, so we're just gonna talk about all the scenes and some of the stuff that we saw. So, scene one. So I'll just start. Multicam, kind of in that. What was that stuff like the cane bamboo?
Giant cane bamboo.
We're not botanists by any way, so if y'all can identify that better, but it's a bamboo like.
It's not poison ivy, and that's the only thing we care about around here.
I personally thought that the Multicam is literally the same color as that stuff, and just being in it, it really does.
Yeah.
Just disappear in there. It blends in very well.
Blended in very well with the lighter foliage.
Yeah. I didn't see any issues with like the light and dark shadows. I know there were some scenes that later on I noticed that in the sunlight, with that sunlight beaming through, like you're made in the Multicam kind of, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, I thought in that scene it did pretty good. How about M81? What are your thoughts on that one?
I think the M81 did fairly well. I think with M81 being darker, it did kind of contrast a bit more against a lot of the lighter foliage and like the pine needles and whatnot. I think it just kind of goes to show that it's not really meant for a light pinewood forest almost. It's meant for more denser evergreen European forests.
Right. Yep. More of an alpine type forest.
Yep.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yep.
All right.
More shadows in the forest as well.
All right. Scene two, we were in that pine woods. He had a lot of fallen timber that's just kind of laying around. Here's where I noticed we had a lot of light and dark shadows. In the light, it seems like there was a sheen kind of on the Multicam where it would actually sort of reflect light. Now, I want to be honest, this is a true Multicam pattern is what I'm wearing. This isn't like a fake pattern or anything. It's actual Multicam. The uniform itself comes from True Spec. So I know that it is it's like that they're poly. It's like a poly cotton blend or Ni-Cotton. I think it's a Nico.
Nico?
Yeah, it's a Nico cotton blend. So
that's kind of the pretty.
Yeah, nylon.
That's pretty much like the typical.
Yeah.
Like Nico is pretty much the typical uniform blend.
So in the sunlight, it just seemed like the Multicam was a little light. So that's just something that I noticed in that too. In that scene. Now, once I take a knee, it does blend well. So, I think yours actually did a little bit better in that scene, though.
I think like I was saying, I think the M81 does a bit stronger in a more complex lighting than the Multicam. We'll see a bit later on. Like the Multicam does a bit stronger with more consistent lighting conditions, such as out in an open field or whatnot.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, if we roll over to see scene three, from what I could tell, we were pretty both well covered in that scene. The woods there were not too dense. So you're on a patrol. You just don't take the damn road somewhere where you're gonna run into a damn ambush or run into mines or an ID or whatever it might be. You're not gonna take the well beaten path. That would be like the worst idea ever.
Well, it also depends too, because if you're on especially in like a combined arms environment, if you're on a recon patrol, you may have to take that
particular route,
that main route, because you got to make sure that it's clear of tank traps or make sure the bridges or whatever are still intact.
Right. Well, if you're in
if you're just going to kind of probe enemy positions, then you might be able to,
especially in like a mechanized more of a
Yeah.
mechanized reconnaissance unit, something like that. But other than that, my point was those woods were pretty clear. Like you could walk right through them. It wasn't like you had to get out the machete and go hacking through or anything like that. So you could walk through the woods pretty easy there. Let's see, scene 4. That's where we started walking closer to the camera. So I'm thinking most of the scenes, none of them got closer than 25 yards.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. I think in that scene we were might have been about 75 yards away, no more than that. So I'd say average distance that we're shooting all these scenes were around, 50 yards. Kind of moving closer each time. So, scene 5. This is where we decided to go prone.
Yeah.
And I'll say this.
Patch of green.
Yeah, I'm not wearing a helmet right now, but when if you wear a helmet, you can really see the outline of that helmet. There was a multicam cover on that helmet, but I really believe that's where scrim would actually help.
That's one of those things that I pointed out where, he didn't bring a boonie when we did that.
No boonie cover.
And I forgot to bring my multicam boonie for you to wear. But
I don't have a multicam boonie.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Unsat, But I feel like if you were wearing a boonie there, you would have been practically invisible. Like with that helmet, that creates a very sharp, clean line.
Yep.
Even with that helmet cover, it's very distinguishable compared to the natural flow of the environment. So that's one of those.
And I didn't veg up on purpose, though.
Yeah. That's one of those things where having helmet scrim or wearing a boonie is going to be a bit more advantageous than just a helmet or helmet with a cover.
Yeah. Well, the next scene, I would say, if you're deep into the woods and you're in like a patrol base, and of course, you should be keeping minimal movement, especially on that outer perimeter where you have listening posts and stuff like that. I would definitely say, we blended in pretty well in that scene. Even with the movement, that was like the deepest in the woods that we were actually could be in that particular scene. So I thought that we both blended in pretty well with that one. And then scene 7 brings us with the attack from the tree line. So let's say that there was like a enemy patrol that was walking that common path like we were talking about a while ago, and L-shaped ambush or whatever it might be. There's no way you're ever going to see someone in the woods like that. So from that vantage point, but the other one, the next scene is where we're bounding. We kind of come popping out. We bound into the field, and I would say in that field, there's just like weeds and grass, kind of is what I would have to say to that. That's like a farm field. Yeah. And I thought that the multicam was literally the same color. So I will say that the M81 blended really well with that dark green background.
With the tree line.
Yeah, with the tree line.
Yeah, the M81 definitely did better against the tree line, but the multicam did a lot better in the field. Yeah. And that's what I was saying with, whenever you went prone in the field, pretty much the only thing I could see was the shadows from your gear. Yeah. Just maybe the helmet popping up, that kind of thing. Yeah. Versus when I went prone in the field, you just see a green blob.
I almost feel like the multicam does a little better job of actually blending in, if that makes sense. Because if the colors in the environment are the same, but with the M81, since the pattern is larger, I think it breaks up the silhouette. Yeah. Everyone sees the black. Why is there black in the M81? Well, for two reasons. I think it cuts the silhouette down a little bit, so it gets that hard defined edge off, and especially against that green background like we saw in that scene. But also, at a distance, that larger shape, right? Isn't that how M81's kind of supposed to work? When you start getting a greater distance away, the pattern.
Well, I think the
changes.
The black spots on the M81 are mostly meant to kind of help simulate the shadows in the woodlands, to create depth within the pattern.
I mean, yeah, because when you look in the woods, like,
Yeah.
there are dark places, you know, the way the trees create the shadows and stuff like that. So the dark places. So, but yeah, I would say, you know, that last scene where we're just kind of patrolling through that open area, and it just seems like in each time, of course, we want to stay behind some type of foliage that helps to make you disappear actually pretty well. So I would say both patterns are pretty good. You just gotta just not stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I think.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think the M81 definitely, or the Multicam, I think it performed a bit better in this environment than the M81 did, just because the M81 I think was meant for, like I said, more dense, complex terrain than the relatively thin woodlands of North Carolina.
Once again, it's a military camouflage pattern. Both of them are, and they might not work for one particular place, but they're supposed to work pretty well for a multitude of places. Whether it's
M81 was pretty much meant for just continental Europe. It was meant for, okay, what's the best pattern
where they
for
thought
continental
the fight
Europe
was going to be for years.
Yeah, for fighting the Soviets in the Fulda Gap and whatnot. Whereas Multicam, it kind of came about. I think the idea was kind of, you know, everybody was seeing U.S. troops deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan and Iraq again with all these khaki, like 3-color desert and chocolate chip pattern uniforms, and then wearing woodland, flak vests and helmet covers. So it was like, okay, how can we make a uniform that's going to work pretty well in pretty much all the environments that we're expected to fight in? Yeah, maybe it's not as good for the forests of Europe, but it's going to work pretty well for the forests of Europe, pretty well for the jungles of South America, pretty well for the deserts of the Middle East, and then some genius decided to adopt UCP instead, which totally worked super well and didn't have any issues whatsoever.
And it blended in with grandmother's couch pretty well.
It worked so well that 15 years later, they went back to Multicam. Funny how that works
for
out.
the most part.
Yeah.
It was Multicam.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everyone...
Legally distinct Multicam. That's what OCP Scorpion is.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. Your experience in the Navy. Y'all wore... AOR. What the hell is that pattern called?
AOR 3, I think.
Yeah.
The Type 3s.
Is it the... that's the green one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like tree moss.
It looks like day-old guacamole is what it looks like. The guac pad is what I like to call it.
Yeah, it does get... it gets kind of dark and disgusting.
But I will say, I was bringing it up, I'd be curious to see how well Multicam Tropic and NWU Type 3 would fare in this type of terrain, because with this being a lighter vegetative terrain, I think those patterns might perform a bit better since they're meant for more tropical environments.
Could be the next video. So.
Could be a future video.
Yeah,
no promises.
Absolutely. Well, if any other final thoughts? If not, then we'll. Yep. All right. Well, we hope everyone enjoyed the video. If you want to go and support our calls out here and maybe get some more videos, purchase some of the gear. We don't necessarily do Patreon or anything like that where people make donations. If you make a donation, that's by buying gear. You get something in return. So
can't guarantee there isn't an OnlyFans though.
You won't find me there.
Not that you know of.
Yeah. All right. We'll check everyone next time. All right. Over and out.